am a little nervous. I'm going to be honest with you. I wasn't actually going to say that, but now I'm here, and so I'm going to say it. But saying that you're nervous, yeah. I am really excited, though. I don't think that, like, if you would have asked me a year ago, I would have been like, nah, I'm good. I'm not going to talk at 180. But I have got to hang out with you guys for the last several months, and to be honest with you, I think you're pretty cool. You all are weird, but I like it because I am weird. So it works. So I really like hanging out with you guys, so that's why I'm here. I am going to tell you about my favorite Bible character, but we're not going to get there yet. So if you don't know me, I know some of you do. I MC, I'm up here. I literally just do weird things on the stage all the time. But my name's Alexa. I am our kids pastor here. So normally I am with infants to third graders. You guys are not infants to third graders, which is why you scare me a little bit. But it's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. So I want to tell you guys a little bit about me. It's going to help you kind of understand where we're going tonight. So I'm originally from Southern Indiana. I like to tell people that I can see Kentucky from my house. That's not 100% true, but it is like within a mile of my house, you can be in Kentucky. So I'm very close to Kentucky. I moved here to Muncie 7 years ago. I started going to Union Chapel 7 years ago. I went to Ball State, and I eventually just stayed here. So in order for anything to make sense tonight, you need to know a little bit about my personality. So I know you guys get a little bit of it while I'm emceeing, but some more of my personality you need to know about. So is anybody familiar with the Enneagram? Okay, a few people. It's okay if you don't. Like the Enneagram test, it's like the numbers. Yeah. I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. That type is coded as the competitive achiever. So take that for what you will. Kenzie gave us an amen on that one. So I, basically what that means is like, I'm a doer. I like want to do all of the things all of the time. I'm obsessed with the right thing to do. So like, I have a very strong sense of like what is right and wrong. And I'm going to do the right thing every time if I can. So that's, justice is really huge for me. When I like set a goal, you pretty much can't stop me. Like I'm going to get there. And so I'm often described as a chameleon. So some people don't like that. Yeah, a chameleon. So basically, I can switch back and forth based on whatever's like going on around me. I can switch to whatever I need to be. So, for example, when I'm a kids pastor, I can be like, I can talk to a little kid like this, and I can be a kids pastor. But then I also can go talk to mom and dad, or I can talk to a volunteer, or I can talk to you guys very differently. And so I just chameleon myself all of the time. But I also am a perfectionist. I would like to say that I'm a recovering perfectionist. I try not to be like that all the time. But honestly, when it comes down to is I am a people pleaser. So when I believe in something really strongly, I'm not going to stop until it's done the right way. I'll bend over backwards to help people, often to a fault. I get really wrapped up in what people think about me as well, and performing to like whatever the highest capacity would be. It sometimes doesn't exist, and I just like work really hard for nothing. So I have some examples of me being like this. One example is I can probably tell you like 6 to 10 things that went wrong since you've been in this building, since you've been in this room. I can probably tell you about 6 things that have gone wrong that you guys have no idea that happened. And that is just because I like cannot turn off who I am. I'm like that all of the time. Another thing is it took me so long to write this because I could not figure out the perfect words to write. And so therefore, I just didn't want to write it. It was all in my head. I had an idea. I knew what I wanted to say, but I could not get it down perfectly. And so I just was like, meh. I can't do it. And so that is another, like my perfectionism coming out. I also am described as like hyper organized. I often get told that I'm a really good leader. I'm gonna toot my horn on that one, my own little horn on that one. But sometimes it's viewed as a bad thing. Sometimes it's viewed as a good thing. That is me. Hello. I am the perfectionist up here. So tonight, what we're gonna talk about is when we get it wrong. When we can't achieve the success that we're going for, or when you don't get things perfectly, when you fail. That is what we're talking about tonight. So like I said earlier, I'm a perfectionist, recovering perfectionist. I'd like to think But basically, I'm 25 years old right now, but I lived the first 20 years of my life just trying to follow the rules, just trying to live perfectly in order to make my family happy, make my friends happy or pleased, and to make Jesus proud of me. That doesn't even make sense to me, but I spent 20 years of my life trying to do everything right all of the time. And then one day, it didn't happen just like boom one day. It happened very slowly over a course of time. But one day I realized that I had gotten it all wrong. I was in what I'm going to call the bottom of failure, the pit of failure. I had failed and I had hit rock bottom. I had nowhere to go, nowhere to run. I didn't know what was up from down, from left to right. It was one of the scariest places I've ever been in my life. And so my hope tonight is that after this, when you get it wrong, when you fail, it isn't so scary. It isn't so helpless. It isn't a place of loss or sadness or depression or despair. But that when you're in the pit of failure, that you can find hope in that. You know what to do. You know where to go. And so whether you're in the pit of failure right now, some of you might be like, yep, that's me right now. Or you've been in failure in the past, which you might have been. I can guarantee you that someday it's going to happen again. You're going to find yourself in a place where you have hit rock bottom. You're not going to know which way to go, and you are just going to be completely helpless in that pit of failure. So we're going to dive in. Like Kinsey said, she's obsessed with King David. I am obsessed with someone else in the Bible. That's my man, Peter. So we're going to be in the New Testament tonight. My man, Peter. I could talk about Peter all day long. I think Jim and I talked for like an hour about Peter the other day. So I am just, obsessed with Peter. So you may know, and you may not know, and it's okay if you don't. Peter is one of Jesus' disciples, and he wasn't just a normal disciple. He was recorded as one of Jesus' 3 best friends. So Jesus had the 12 disciples, but Peter was in like that inner 3. And so Peter's job before he met Jesus was that he was a fisherman. And that was his job. That's what he did. His name was actually Simon, son of John. So here in a little bit, we'll read the Bible. And so it talks about Simon, son of John, Simon Peter, and just Peter. It's all the same person. So we're clear. So that's all the same person. Jesus ends up renaming Peter, because that word means rock. And we'll get to that in a little bit. So when Jesus and Peter met for the first time, it went something like this. This is something I like to do in kids ministry, so just bear with me. We're going to do the Miss Alexa version of the story. And so I just tell you the story how I interpret it. So this is what it says in Luke 5. This is Jesus and Peter meeting for the first time. So Jesus was like, hey, whose boat is that? And Peter was like, that would be mine. I am a pro fisherman, and this is my boat. And at this point, Peter had not caught anything. He was trying to do his job, but he hadn't caught anything, even though it was his job to catch fish. He wasn't doing that. So Jesus, being Jesus, says, hey, Peter, have you caught anything? Actually, it would be Simon, son of John. Have you caught anything? And Jesus knows that Peter hasn't caught anything, but Peter tells him, well, no, we haven't caught anything. And Jesus tells him to put his nets on the other side of the boat. And then Peter's like, okay, thank you for the advice. I am, in fact, a pro fisherman. Got it. We just a bad night. And Jesus is like, no. Put your nets on the other side. And so Peter's like, okay, fine. I'm a pro fisherman, but whatever. Okay, I'll do that. And so Jesus is like, I know you're a pro fisherman, put him on the other side. So Peter does it, and he catches a lot of fish. And so then Jesus is like, again, how Jesus is, he's like, sweet, congratulations, you caught a lot of fish. You're not going to catch any more fish anymore. We are going to go be fishers of men. Let's go. And they go, and they follow. Peter just is like, okay, cool, we'll all do that. And so Peter starts to follow Jesus. So from this very first interaction of Jesus and Peter, we begin to start to see Peter's character, even through my exaggerated version of the story. This dude is wild. This is why I love Peter. He is crazy. Peter is literally known for being super passionate, very stubborn, impulsive, and really like brave. Like he just will like defend you for like anything. Like if you are his friend, he's got your back 100%. And so no wonder Jesus named him Rock. He just is like firm. He's there for you. And so those are like kind of the positive things about Peter that we would say. But Peter also tended towards legalism, which would just be like following the rules. You getting why I love Peter here? Like, I'm a lot like Peter. But so he tended towards legalism. He wanted to follow the rules, and most of the other disciples didn't really understand some of Jesus' teachings. They were really radical, but every time Peter was like, yes, that's it right there. He was so for Jesus. He just absolutely loved him. He was the outspoken leader of the group. He just loved Jesus so much. So he loved Jesus so much that he did some crazy things. One time, he saw Jesus walking on water. The Son of God was walking on water as the Son of God can do. And Peter was like, I want to do that. And so we did. He literally just like jumped out of the boat and started walking on water. Insane to me. That is just like, I don't even think I would be bold enough to be like, I think I'll try that. Like that just like doesn't even make sense to me. But he did. He jumped out of the boat. He walked on water. It was only for a second because he lost focus and like looked away from Jesus. Probably because he was worried about what the disciples were thinking about him. That's what I'm going to go ahead and say because I think Peter was a people pleaser as well. And so he lost focus. He started sinking. He got scared. But he walked on water. He's crazy. Another point when Peter was absolutely insane. He, at the end of Jesus' life, Jesus is about to be arrested. And again, Peter just loves Jesus so much. And he just is like a loyal defender. He cut off a guy's ear. Now, my husband and I, we had this conversation. Peter sliced off this guy's ear. So here's our question. We're not sure if Peter was actually a really great swordsman or if he really sucked at being a swordsman. I don't know if Peter was like trying to cut off his ear. Like he was like, I'm going to slice your ear off right now, and did it. Or if Peter wanted to do much more and he just was really bad at it and he like accidentally cut off this guy's ear. I don't know. Either way, Peter knew that Jesus, like something that was unjust was happening. He knew that Jesus did not deserve to be arrested. And so Peter just stepped right in. He wanted to defend Jesus. He had this passion and this courage and a desire for justice, and it got the best of him. And so now, I don't know about you, but I find myself a lot in Peter. Maybe if there was just one of those things that you see yourself in Peter. I will probably not be walking on water anytime soon, and I am not a good swordsman, but I can see that passion and that outspokenness and that desire for justice. I can see myself in Peter. And so Peter was a fierce defender of Jesus. He loved Jesus so much, and I think this guy is super sweet. So, unfortunately, those are all kind of the good things, I guess, about Peter, but that's not what Peter is ultimately known for a lot of the times. Peter is often remembered as the disciple who denied Jesus. Not the one who betrayed him, that would be Judas, but Peter is known for denying even knowing Jesus 3 times the night that Jesus was crucified. And so I want to take a look at Matthew chapter 26. We're going to read 67 through 75, and this is the moment of Peter's failure. So I want your eyes on the screen. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry I said that. That's like I say it to the kids. I'm really sorry. Check it out. Oh my gosh, that was, give me a second. I'm flustered. Okay. Oh my goodness. 26, what am I reading? 69. Okay. This is what it says. Now Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him. You also were with Jesus of Galilee, she said. But he denied it before them all. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. Then he went out to the gateway, where another servant girl saw him and said to the people there, this fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth. He denied it again with an oath. I don't know the man. After a little while, those standing there went up to Peter and said, surely you are one of them. Your accent gives you away. Then he began to call down curses, and he swore to them, I don't know the man. Immediately a rooster crowed. Then Peter remembered the word Jesus had spoken. Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. And he went outside and wept bitterly. So this is the moment of Peter's failure. Peter has realized that he has gotten it wrong. He's hit rock bottom. He doesn't have anywhere to go, and he's completely lost. Peter has found himself at the bottom of failure. And so Peter, he absolutely loved Jesus. He was a disciple of Jesus. He was in Jesus' 3 best friends, yet he denied even knowing Jesus at all. And I would classify that as a pretty big failure. So, all right, now, if you've ever failed, maybe you can think about that, or you're even familiar with the topic, so you all should be thinking about failure at this point. You've probably heard some of the following phrases. I think these are ridiculous. I'm just warning you. So you maybe have heard some of these failures about, or these sayings about failure. There's no such thing as failure, just a learning opportunity. What about this? Failure isn't something to fear. Success is built on failure. This is my least favorite, but favorite of all of them. Failure is the condiment that gives success its flavor. These are bullcrap. These are stupid. I cannot stand this. Okay, so if imagine Peter is out here weeping bitterly because he has just denied Jesus. Okay, I learned this from TikTok. This is wild. I learned this right after I wrote this. Peter denying even knowing Jesus would have been worse to like Jewish people. It would have been worse than what Judas had done to Jesus. So Judas betrayed Jesus, gave him up, and let him be crucified. But Peter even denying even knowing Jesus would have been absolutely worse. So he's down in the dumps here, people. And if we would have told him, or you would have told me, failure is the condiment that gives success its flavor, I think I would have screamed. I think I would have yelled at you. I might have hit you. Not helpful at all. They might be nice phrases sometime. You can put it on your wallpaper, on your phone, whatever, that's fine. But when you're actually there, that is not helpful. That it doesn't help me get from where I'm at to not there anymore. It doesn't help me get out of that pit of failure. And so they're not all bad phrases, but they're not what you want to hear. And so I want to take you back to where I was in that pit of failure. So I'm going to take you back to college. I know college might seem really far away for some of you, but also for some of you, it might be oh my goodness, college is right here. And you're a little terrified of it, and that's okay. But I want to take you back to my college years. So I came into college living that perfect life. I was trying to follow all the rules. And because I had spent my whole life up to that point trying to follow the rules, so obviously that's what I was going to do when I came to college. And so I found myself clinging to this version of perfection that I thought I needed to portray. And so I wanted everyone to see me as the perfect Christian girl. And so like Peter, I loved Jesus. I really did. If you would have asked me, I would have been yes, I'm on fire for Jesus. I was so passionate about it. Or so I thought. When I came to college, I started to meet people who were living in this freedom that I was so confused by. It was wild to me. These people had they weren't governed, or they weren't tied down by these rules or these do's or these don'ts, right and wrong. I literally could not understand how these people loved Jesus. I could tell they loved Jesus, and so did I thought. Loved Jesus, but they were living so differently than me. They were not exhausted all the time. They weren't trying to follow the rules all the time. They were not tied down to this idea of perfection. And so things started to stir in me. But of course, I'm a people pleaser. I'm a perfectionist, so no one knew it. Not a single soul knew that I was just so confused. I just was going to keep doing my thing, following the rules, doing the right thing. That's what I was going to do. And so inside, though, there's these doubts and the imperfection. I was just starting to get a little overwhelmed. And so fast forward to my junior year of college, I found myself living 2 completely separate lives, literally 2 different lives. One life was this perfect, I was doing the right thing. I was with all of these people, and I just check boxes. Got it. Easy. I've done it my whole life. Got it. Then on the other hand, I have friends who don't love Jesus, which is okay. Totally great. I have these friends who don't love Jesus, and it was like the most like relaxed I think I've ever been in my whole life. I didn't have to like care. It was like relief that I didn't feel like I was going to be judged. I didn't feel like I had to be perfect anymore. And so I was living two lives. Now, one day I found myself exactly where Peter was. I found myself at the bottom of failure. And I'm not even really sure how I like fully got there. But this is what happened. I had found myself in a place where I knew that I could not keep living this fake perfect life. I couldn't keep checking off the boxes and just trying to get it done. I could not like will myself there anymore. I couldn't do it because that was exhausting. Completely exhausting trying to follow all the rules all the time. But I also knew that I couldn't go and continue to live this other life. Although it was relaxing at moments, it was not life at all. It was like simultaneously excruciatingly exhausting and relaxing at the same time. Living two lives is literally impossible. I could not do it because this life over here was a cheap substitute for what life actually was. And then this fake perfect life also wasn't life either. So I found myself in this spot where I couldn't continue doing either. I couldn't live the perfect life. I couldn't live this not life. I had to pick something different. And so I knew that there were these people that were experiencing freedom. So I ended up choosing that. I chose a different way, and we'll get to that here in a second. But ultimately, I found myself in this like just complete. I was lost. Just completely have no idea who I am. I had fallen into this failure of my own sin. I'd fallen into the sin of like my own perfection and my own desire for perfection. I'd fallen into like wanting to fit in so badly that I would literally do anything. And most of it wasn't God-honoring. I'd fallen into the sin of comparison, and I had no idea how to get out of that pit. Thankfully, I knew some people who were experiencing Jesus, and so they helped me. And so this is kind of what I've learned. So I met Peter where he was in the same spot that I was in. First time I really ever like met Peter, he was weeping bitterly because he had just denied Jesus. And I felt like I had just done the same thing. And so he had fallen into the sin of like this, of justice, of self-preservation. He was just trying not to die like Jesus was. And he cared a lot about what other people thought about him. And so I could see myself in Peter. And so maybe you can too. Maybe you have fallen into failure through your own sin. If you don't think you have, you probably will. Maybe you've fallen into the sin of comparison just like me. Maybe you've fallen into the sin of lust, of deceit, of anger. I don't know what you're struggling with, but I do know that Peter's story, it wasn't over at his failure. That's not where the story ends. It might be what he's remembered for, but that's not where it ends. His name is Rock. Jesus literally changed his name from Simon to Peter, which means rock. And it wasn't because he was so stubborn or rough around the edges or hard-headed. It was because Jesus was going to use Peter as the rock on which he would build his church. So I met Peter in his failure and my own, but he didn't stay there. And I don't want you to either. So something I do in kids ministry, Jennifer encouraged me to do this, is we do one thing. We're not going to like repeat it, but I make all the kids like put their finger up. But ultimately what I want you to learn, what I learned from Peter and from Jesus when I got it wrong, is that when you're at the bottom of failure, when you've gotten it wrong, when you don't know what else to do and you don't think there's a way out, this is what you're going to do. Follow Jesus. Follow Jesus. Just take one step towards Jesus. All right, let's pick up our story where Peter is weeping bitterly. Let's jump to John chapter 21, verses 1 through 14. I'm going to read it, hopefully, quickly, because there's a lot. So, John chapter 21, 1 through 14. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples. So Jesus has resurrected. He's back from the dead. So afterward, he appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael from Canaan in Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. I'm going out to fish, Simon Peter told them, and they said, we'll go with you. So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize it was Jesus. He called out to them, friends, haven't you any fish? No, they answered. He said, throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some. Then when they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved, that would be John, he is writing about himself, said to Peter, it is the Lord. As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, it is the Lord, he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from the shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish you have caught. So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish. But even with so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. None of the disciples dared ask him, who are you? They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came, took the bread and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the 3rd time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. Oh, that's so good. So good. Okay, so now we find Peter and his disciples back to familiar territory. They've gone back home and they've started fishing again. Peter is doing his job. The thing he was the pro fisherman before, he is now doing that again. And so here we see Jesus do a couple of things, and I like to think that they're all just for Peter, even though John wrote it. I think that they're just for Peter because it makes it even more special. So be sure to remember that Peter has just denied even knowing Jesus just several days before, and he's gone back to his job as a fisherman, but that does not mean that he's gone back to normal. That does not mean that he's not still in that pit of failure. He might even still be weeping bitterly. He has done something worse than what Judas did. He has just denied knowing Jesus, this guy that he absolutely loves. So he's at the bottom of his pit of failure, and Jesus does these 2 thing that Jesus does, that he came to Peter. He came to where Peter was. Peter had gone back to his familiar territory. He had gone back to what he was used to, clearly what he wasn't very good at because he couldn't catch any fish. He went back. He was failing at that, but Jesus came to where Peter was. He came and he found Peter. He didn't wait for Peter to come find him. Peter knew he was alive. He didn't wait for Peter to come find him. Jesus went and found Peter. That was the first thing Jesus did. He came and found him. And then the second thing that Jesus did is he fed Peter breakfast. Who gets hungry ever? A good breakfast can solve that a lot of the time. Okay, so Jesus, fully God, fully man, Jesus knew Peter was hungry. He just took care of him physically. That's what I'm getting to here. Peter had to have been hungry. They had been fishing all night, hadn't caught anything, and Jesus found a way to love Peter just right there, easy. Whatever Jesus was going to say next, Peter wasn't going to hear it. He was going to be too hungry. I just guarantee it. So Jesus loved Peter in a very practical way. So this is all for Jesus to start bringing Peter out of that pit of failure. He's like, come on, it'll be okay. I've come to you now, and I'm going to feed you breakfast, and we're going to keep making this journey together. So this entire interaction is just Jesus bringing Peter back to before the failure. You probably noticed Peter wasn't catching any fish. There was another time that Peter didn't catch any fish. And Peter just like jumped in the water. Peter has also jumped in the water before. Jesus is like making a scenario that Peter has already experienced. He's bringing Peter like out of the failure that he's in right now and like back to when he really, really loved Jesus. Back when everything was good, he's now like reminding Peter of those things. I skipped ahead. So Jesus didn't leave Peter in that pit. Jesus found a very practical way, two practical ways to like come to Jesus or to come to Peter. So Jesus went to where he was and he fed him breakfast. And so he didn't come to Peter and is like, hey, Peter, your failure is just a condiment to your success. No, he didn't say a stupid quote. He came to where Peter was and he loved him in a very practical way. So that's Jesus kind of bringing Peter out of that. Now, we're going to go to what Jesus says next. So we're going to read John 21, 15 through 19. And so now Jesus really is talking directly to Peter. This part is called Jesus Reinstates Peter. It's really good stuff here. So John 21, 15 through 19, this is what it says. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said, you know I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep. Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said, follow me. We see here that Jesus asks Peter 3 questions. And it's all the same question. It's, Peter, do you love me? Jesus has quickly taken Peter from, he was in the pit of failure, not catching any fish, back to where he had gone before, probably weeping bitterly. He took him from here, and he pulled him out to like before this all happened. He like reminded him of when things were really good. And now he's taken Peter all the way back to, you said you didn't even know me, but do you love me? Talk about emotional whiplash. That just like makes me tired thinking about it. But Jesus asked Peter, do you love me? And he asked him 3 times. And each of these questions serves a purpose in bringing Peter back to each one of his denials. He denied Jesus 3 times. And Jesus asked him, do you love me? 3 times. It's almost as if Jesus is, with his question, do you love me? He's allowing Peter to feel the pain of each one of his denials one more time, but then immediately forgiving each one of them. Jesus isn't asking Peter if he loves him because Jesus needs to hear it. That's not it. Deuteronomy 6:5, it commands us to love the Lord your God. Jesus doesn't need us to love him. We're commanded to do it. Jesus doesn't need it. He just wants it. Our relationship with God is not based on a perfect performance, doing everything right, never failing, never getting it wrong. It's just about loving him. So Jesus asked Peter, do you love me? And it brings back the pain of that original failure. And it's all in order to bring restoration and forgiveness. It's a process. So next, we see that Peter responds to Jesus' questions. And we get the same 3 responses. Yes, Lord, I love you. But each of these serves a different purpose. So Jesus asking, do you love me 3 times? It's to cover up for the three denials. Now, Peter says, yes, Lord, I love you. And that is going to do 3 different things. First, Peter needs to hear himself say it. He has just said, I don't even know this guy. And so he needed to hear him say, yes, Lord, I love you. Because he needed to be reassured that he wasn't a complete failure. The devil was working really hard to make Peter believe like he was never going to be forgiven. But it was very clear that Peter loved Jesus. He cut a dude's ear off. He jumped in the water and walked on water. Peter needed to hear himself say, "Yes, Lord, I love you." And then Peter's second response was for his friends, the other disciples that were with him. Like I said, Peter denying even knowing Jesus would have been worse than what Judas had done. And so the other disciples needed to hear Peter say, "Yes, Lord, I love you," because they weren't sure. I'm sure they weren't sure because Peter had just done literally the worst thing you could do. And so they needed to hear Peter say, "Yes, Lord, I love you." They needed to know that Peter wasn't lost for good and that Jesus hadn't forgotten about him. And then lastly, Peter says, "Yes, Lord, I love you." And that one was for Jesus. Jesus wanted to hear it. He knew that Peter loved him. He didn't need to hear it, but he wanted to hear it. Jesus was human too. He wanted Peter to say, "Yes, Lord, I love you," even if it made Peter mad. So now here's the best part. We're getting to the end, I promise. Here's the best part. Jesus restores Peter to his purpose, and he commands him to do three things. The first two are to to feed my lambs and take care of my sheep. Those are really important things, but that's like a whole other talk, so we're not going to go there yet. But here, Jesus is calling Peter into his line of work. So Jesus' job, the Bible literally tells us that Jesus is the good shepherd. And so what Jesus is doing, he's saying, "Peter, that was my job, and I need you to come do it with me." He's telling Peter, "Come do the thing that I do. I want you to do it with me. I want you to join me in this kingdom work." And so right here, Jesus is telling Peter, "You're useful. You're important. I need you. I want you to do this thing with me. It's not all lost." Jesus is reinstating Peter back to his original calling for him. So back in Matthew 16:18, Jesus said, "And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." So then Jesus commands one more thing from Peter. So he said, "Feed my lambs, take care of my sheep." It was all in calling Peter back to his purpose, saying, "You can still do it. You haven't messed it up too much." And then he commands Peter to do this. And this is what he commands of you and I when we're at the bottom of our failures. Follow me. Follow me. Not once did Peter mess up his ultimate calling. Never once did he do anything that was so wrong that Jesus couldn't use him. Not once did he mess it up. He denied him 3 times, but not once did Peter mess it up. All Jesus asked of Peter was, "Do you love me? If yes, then follow me." And never once did Jesus give up on me. When I was living two completely separate lives, trying to live by the rules and failing miserably, completely exhausted, Jesus met me right where I was. When I thought that I was the biggest failure, I didn't have a life to go to. And Jesus asked me, "Do you love me? If yes, then follow me." At that point, I didn't know what following me meant, but I surrounded myself with people who were living that way. People like you guys at 180, your small group leaders, your friends. I surrounded myself with people who were following Jesus, and I just followed with them. I took one step towards Jesus, even though I didn't have any idea what I was doing. So Jesus is asking the same of you. 180, do you love me? If yes, then follow me. So when you're at the bottom of failure, when you've completely messed it up, if it's like me or like Peter and you just don't know where to go, or when you're at the top of the world and everything is going great, Jesus is still asking you, do you love me? If yes, then follow me. You don't have to get it all right. You don't have to follow all the rules perfectly. Just follow Jesus. Peter got it absolutely wrong. He messed it up. He did literally the worst thing you can do. but he still loved Jesus. And so he followed him. So what do we do when we get it wrong? Follow Jesus. Because Jesus can always use you. There's always a purpose. You've never once messed it up too bad. Follow Jesus. Peter is proof that Jesus can still use you. I'm proof that Jesus can still use you. And you can be proof too. So, 180. Do you love him? If yes, follow Jesus. I'm going to pray, and the band's going to come on up. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for today and this wonderful group of students. I pray for each and every one of them that they can follow you, Jesus. That when you ask them, do you love me, no matter where they are in life, at the bottom of failure or at the top of success, that when you ask them, do you love me, they can say yes, and they can follow you. It's in Jesus' mighty and wonderful name we pray. Amen.